Hi everyone. There were some questions about line weights and pencils and stuff like that yesterday, so I just wanted to do a little tutorial on that. I wanted to show you my pencils, and I'm going to start from the hardest here. This happens to be an 8H, believe it or not. It means that I can draw layout lines with using slightly harder pressure because it's quite hard. Then I have a 4H, 2H, and the HB, which you're all used to, and then I have a 4B, which is super, super, super soft. The first thing I want to say about these pencils is that you should keep them sharp all the time. And so I've got this little handheld sharpener, which I use and can be dumped out easily. But there's a funny thing that happens with this sharpener. It gives me weird ends. I don't know if you can see the weird end on this thing. But what I have to do after sharpening it is I just have to take it and sort of fix that end because it doesn't give me a sharp point. And so I just fix that end like that. And then, yeah, it's obviously harder with a harder pencil. The graphite in there takes a little bit longer to sort of, change it into a proper point. What you can do is get a very fine sandpaper, maybe a 600 grit, and just use that to sort of fix that point. Yeah, so what I've done here is, I want to also talk about mechanical pencils for a moment. They're really handy because you don't have to sharpen them, but you do have to change the lead. So you can start with a very hard lead, like say a 6H or whatever, to do all your layout. But then as you move through the line weights and the various things, you have to switch out the lead in your pencil or get a whole nother pencil and fill that up with your new lead. So it's kind of a hassle, but it's great because you don't have to sharpen it, which I like a lot. All right, so the other thing that's going on here is line weights. So I'll just get rid of these. And I wanted to, I hope you can, I made 4 layout lines on here, and they're possibly very, not very visible on screen, but I can see them just barely. And what I like about that is the fact that I can leave them after the fact. I don't need to erase the layout lines. So I put all the layout lines down, which means all the object lines, border lines, dimension lines, extension lines, absolutely everything, section lines, the whole 9 yards. And then I can make sure that everything's right, and then I can come back and fill them in later. So layout doesn't change, it's 6H. 4H would be the next one. I'll pick that up. And so this is a dimension line, so I'll come over onto the dimension line like this, and I'm coming in with my 4H pencil, and I'll just push relatively hard. And that's about it. It just kind of doubles the darkness of the layout line. So I'll go through and I'll darken in all my dimension lines. I might go ahead and brush them off afterwards with a brush, not your hand or not blowing. And then I'll come back and do the object lines. And I like to use a 2H for that. And here I say HB or 2H, but I like using a 2H because it gives me a nice crisp line. So I move my straight edge on there and I push down. And can you see now how that is ever so slightly darker than a dimension line? Okay, and then the next thing I'll do is a border, and I think I'll use my HB for that. This is this is a really cheap HB, pretty standard. The problem with cheap pencils is that you get sort of grit in the graphite, and as you pull across, you can feel a sort of scratchiness to it. So it's probably going to happen with this. So how do we do a border? Well, I like to see a really thick, dark border. So here's the trick for doing that. And it's going to be the last thing we darken in. We'll move our straight edge over onto the border line. And again, I'm going to pull down and I'm going to rotate slightly so that I have a nice consistent line. Like that. But here's the trick to a border. We want a really wide line. So now I'm going to tilt the pencil over and rotate it without moving my straight edge. And I'm going to do that again. And do you see how I get a nice thick border line? And that's how that's done. And again, don't sweep it away with your hand or blow it away. That's the trick right there. I'm not sure that you can actually see how wide that line is. But let's see, where's my scale ruler? Right here it is. Well, if I was to measure that border line, I'd say it's about 1 millimeter thick. So you can see that there's a gradient between them. And that's the real art to this. If there's any questions, feel free to reply below, and we'll see you soon.